Welcome, everybody. This is Rick DiClemente with StarSelf.com and another edition of Astrology Unplugged. Tonight, we're going to talk about some exciting stuff, which is Saturn within days of going into Capricorn, and try to get you straight on that. It's not all doom and gloom. But the big topic tonight, I realized, was to go through charts. I'm going to use the people here and go through the charts and show you what makes a planet important. Why is this planet strong? Why is this planet not too significant? What's the difference? And this takes all your knowledge brought to bear one time to do this. But before I do that, I want to talk about Saturn, and I'm going to also talk about Saturn in each sign, for each sign of the zodiac in general. So if we take a look, let's see, before I get started with that, I did want to announce my partner, Liza Jane Brown, that is her pen name. Liza Jane Brown is an expert with hospice, and we have decided she's going to put on a show here pretty much all by herself in the near future that's about death and dying. A lot of us are older. A lot of us are putting parents into different kinds of facilities. There's a lot going on with hospice. There's a lot going on with death and dying. It's not what it used to be, and she's going to be excellent. I'll be running the show, pushing the buttons, but she will be running the body of the show. So tell your friends who may be interested in this that they can access an absolute expert on the subject, even though it's Pennsylvania law here. Death and dying is the same everywhere. She has become quite an expert with the spiritual approach, which means she can talk to someone who's Christian that's dying, somebody that's Buddhist that's dying, somebody that's an atheist that's dying. So it's a broader viewpoint than it used to be. So we look forward to that show coming in the near future. I'll let you know. Good evening, Susan. Okay, we're going to get ready. We're going to talk about Saturn going into Capricorn. Let me show you here. So you can see in, not this chart, let me see here. You can see in the chart for today, here's the chart for today. Okay, you can see that Saturn is in late Sagittarius at 29 degrees. Now, I'm going to show you the difference here because this can be confusing. I choose to show the cusps of the houses. These are not the cusps of the signs. I'm used to this. This is my way of doing it. Other people are different. This is the beginning, end of the first house, beginning of the second house. End of the second house, beginning of the third house. The signs are here, but they're hard to tell. Let me explain to you what that means. In case you're not used to this, I'll show you how the signs line up. We're going to draw with this and draw it in red. Okay, so if you're looking for where the signs are, they're not here. You have to imagine them. So here's the second degree of Gemini. Here's the 26th degree of Gemini. So approximately right here is the end of Gemini, and there's the beginning of Gemini. So between that whole red piece of pie there, that's where Gemini is. And that Gemini goes to approximately beginning of Cancer is around here. The end of Cancer is around here somewhere. I do that in my mind, but it can be confusing if you're a beginner. Another way of doing it is to change your wheel style. For example, if I were to show you the same chart with a different wheel, watch what this does. This is called European version 4, I believe. Solar Fire gives you many choices. Euro 4. So beginners might enjoy this one. Let me repaint the screen for you. So in this case, you're seeing the signs of the zodiac. You see the signs are visible, okay? So you can see right away where the beginning of Gemini is, where the end of Gemini is. These lines still represent the first house, the second house, the third house. So up in Aries, Aries goes from here to here. This is the beginning of the 12th house. I just do it mentally. So I don't want you to get confused about that. Let me change back to the wheel style that I'm used to, which is Unit 2. Okay, there we go. All right, so what we're seeing here, Saturn has been in the sign of Sagittarius for 28 months. Saturn's pretty standard, 28 months or 2.5 years in a sign. We'll go all the way around the circle, 28 years. So when Saturn changes signs, it's a big deal. So why is it such a big deal? Because Saturn has been in Sagittarius, and it's going home into Capricorn, which is a sign where it is the ruler. Now, a lot of people go, oh my God, it's Saturn. Oh my God, it's Capricorn. Well, if you're not used to Saturnian energies, this can be kind of stressful. But the big thing I've been talking with Liza about is you're going to sense, and you're sensing now. Look, when these planets get to the anaretic degree, the anaretic degree is the first or the last degree of the sign. Look what just happened today. I mean, if the internet is anything, it is Sagittarian. And here in the last few seconds, the last few minutes of Saturn leaving Sagittarius, look what Saturn does. It comes in and puts restrictions on the internet. It puts restrictions on the flow of free information with the internet laws that they're messing with. So this was given me years ago by Stephen Arroyo, and he's exactly right. When these planets exit stage right or they exit stage left, they seem to really stop for a second at the end of the stage and deliver a very strong message. So don't be surprised. Saturn is going to go into Capricorn on the 19th, okay? And around that time, don't be surprised. And in every one of your charts, everybody, look at the end of Sagittarius, look at 0 degrees of Capricorn. Saturn is making a big message right there. Now, as I've told you after a lot of study, and I am a double Capricorn, my mind, Saturn and Capricorn are about 2 words. And the 2 words I came up with are make sure. That's what Saturn does. If you don't understand that it's trying to make sure, then you will get the wrong impression of Saturn, and you'll get the old day impression of the malefic and Saturn limiting you, and Saturn stopping you, and Saturn restricting you. Well, how else are you going to make sure unless you grab something, and take control of it? So it's an indirect byproduct of Saturn, but Saturn's intentions are very good. Its intentions are, this isn't working, identify it, and let's fix it. So with Saturn going into Capricorn, you're going to see this happening globally, across the country, in your family, and especially in yourself. So not only that, but take a look at this. Not only is Saturn crossing at 29 into 0 degrees of Capricorn on the 19th, but here comes the sun. The sun is only 6 degrees away. So within 1 or 2 days, 21st and 22nd, 19, 21, 22, between those 3-4 days are there, the sun and Saturn are going to both cross into Capricorn at the same time. Now, one of the things that's interesting that's not written enough about, when these planets change signs, it's called ingress. I-N-G-R-E-S-S. When Saturn ingresses into Capricorn, or Saturn ingresses into another house, goes into, not only are you going to feel Saturn in Capricorn, but you're going to feel the contrast between being Sagittarian shifting into Capricorn. And if you look at the zodiac, there's too much talk about Saturn and Sag and Saturn and Capricorn. What's really necessary is that you understand why they're positioned next to each other, which is why we celebrate the 6th year of the exquisite zodiac, which happens to be 6 years old just a couple of days ago. And the reason I bring that up is in that book, we tried very hard to show you how one sign morphs into the next sign. There's reason behind it. And so many people have read that book and they read their own sign and they did exactly what I told them not to do. You cannot understand yourself by reading your sign. You will get a part of it, but you really need to read the sign before you and the sign after you. And you really should read all 12 signs. Then you can understand where your sign's coming from, archetypally. And what Sagittarius is, being the 9th sign, coming up to the 10th sign, which is the top of the zodiac, Sagittarius is the end of the quadrant of relationships. I've got my relationships in Libra. I've got my deeper relationships in Scorpio. Sagittarius, I'm done with personal relationships. Now I'm relating to people as governments, as bodies of people, as the students walking around the Harvard campus, as exchange students. So it's the Sagittarius is the sign of people on a large scale. But really what's happening in the sign of Sagittarius is the soul is getting bigger and bigger and more capable and broader and able to handle others because it's ready to take its position in the world. Saturn gets to the top of the chart in Capricorn. And when you see all these other zodiacs drawn willy-nilly, if they don't have Capricorn at the top, they're drawn incorrectly. And it's amazing how many zodiacs are drawn wrong, and they're even drawn backward, and sometimes they're even out of order. Aries is always here. Always. Capricorn is always here. Always. Well, you're looking at something incorrect. It's not that Capricorn's the best. Capricorn is symbolic of taking your position in the world of form. Taking your position. And yes, there are 2 signs after Aquarius and Pisces that make matters much more complex, where the soul becomes even more universal. So, not only are you going to be feeling this, I know I'm feeling it for sure. What I'm going to do for each of you, I'm going to go quickly through this, then we'll get into the weighting discussion that we talked about, which is how do you know when a planet is strong or weak? Okay, for Aries people, Saturn will be coming from the top of the chart, 10th house. Put it together. Make sure position. Make sure job, 10th house. So for Aries people, they're going to be feeling like this is not working, or identifying parts of their life that are not working and making sure they get back on track. The 10th house is the position I want to take in this world. A lot of Aries will change jobs. They'll get promotions. It's a very responsible place. So Aries people very likely will have to take on more weight and responsibility at work. This is how you do what's called horoscopes. If you look at Taurus next, the 2nd sign, okay, then what's at the top of the zodiac? But the sign Aquarius. So Saturn will be entering the 9th house. So for all Tauruses, Saturn is going into the 9th house for Tauruses. And that means Tauruses need to firm up their philosophy, their belief systems, their study, the law, but they need to get their philosophy straight. You keep going around a circle. Gemini sits on the 1st house. Everything is always measured through the 1st house. Across from Gemini is Sag. Therefore, Saturn will be in the 8th house. So for all Geminis, and I've already seen a couple people today, Saturn's going through their 8th house. And this means they need to firm up their relationships with other people. Need to firm up their relationships with other people. What do I do? What do I need to do? What do I need to adjust? Because when I'm with you, how do you affect my self-worth? When I'm with you, how do you affect my self-worth? How do I let you affect my self-worth? 8th house. On to the next sign, Cancer. For Cancer, Saturn will be coming from the 7th. Cancer's here opposite Capricorn. Saturn's going into 0 Capricorn. So you go backward through the zodiac. So for Cancers, they're going to need to firm up their 7th house matters, which mainly is not relationships. That's misunderstood. It mainly is, what role do they want to play with others? What role do Cancers want to play with other people? Yes, it can change marriage or divorce, yes. It can make you want to go one way or the other, but you can't adjust how you are unless you adjust how you are with other people. They're intimately integrated. So for Cancers, they're going to be putting a lot of obsession into, I need to fix my relationship. Why? So my life will work better. Saturn, make sure. What's it making sure? So that your life works. It's not complicated. Leo, the next sign. So for all the Leo people, Saturn will be going through the 5th house. And the 5th house is your ability to express yourself. Am I able to express myself as me? Usually this is smooth and easy for Leos because Leo is the natural home for the 5th house. So Leo people usually don't have much trouble expressing themselves unless there's something more complex going on in the birth chart. Virgo people. Virgos are going to have Saturn going through the 4th house. Now, this is not a simple one because we all know the 4th house is all about emotion. And we know that Virgo is one of the signs that's not really strong with emotions. So Virgos are going to have to get a grip on their emotions and start to not just suppress them, which is very Virgoan, but get a handle on them. It doesn't mean get a stranglehold on them. Get your emotions working. What do you mean what happened to the 6th house? Okay. Did I miss one? Excuse me. Okay. I did miss one. Okay, so if Virgo is here, Leo, Aquarius, okay, I was incorrect. That's right. I'm sorry, I got Leo wrong. Leo people will have Aquarius in the 7th. Therefore, Leos will have Saturn going through the 6th. I apologize. You are correct. So, for Leo people in the 6th house, Leo people are going to realize the 6th house is preparation, changing your work skills. But what the 6th house is really about is perfecting the self because you're ready to go socialize. Perfecting the self by learning skills, maybe taking on new skill sets in your life, but it's really because you're trying to do so in preparation for when you change your role with people. So you'll see Leos taking on classes that are very practical, learning to help out their careers, etc. So now that I'm back on track, thank you. My class is getting too smart for me. The Virgo people, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The Virgo people, I was wrong. It's not the 4th house for Virgo. It is the 5th house. So for Virgo people, this is not easy. Virgos are not comfortable expressing themselves, especially feelings. They're not comfortable. And they're going to see that they need to do so. They need, because everybody needs to express yourself to be healthy. The 5th house is I am healthy and I'm going to be able to talk about it. And the problem with Virgos is they see it as selfish. They see it as ego-centered. And Virgos really need to see it differently because it's not. You really have the right to, and you should be able to express yourself. Now, when we move to Libra, Libra is going to get Saturn from the 4th house. Libra, Scorpio, Sag, 4th house, Capricorn. So for Libras, I know you're mainly an intellectual sign, a thinker, a talker, but you Libras need to get your emotions in check. Now, I bet you every Libra I'm talking to that's listening to this is feeling this. I need to get myself emotionally straightened out so that I can operate better. That's what it means. Now, there's a fine line between Virgoan, which is fix it, and Capricorn, which is to make sure. They're very similar. Virgos fix things, Capricorns make sure. So for you Libras, if your life is not working, you need to get your emotions under control. Okay? Go to Scorpio now. Put Scorpio in the first house. Sag goes into the second. Capricorn's coming from the third. The third house is how your mind works. Okay? So for Scorpios, for you to advance, you're going to need to get a handle on all these wild boiler volcanic explosions that you have emotionally and get your mind under control. Are you able to control your mind, or do these great big puffs of clouds of strong emotions get in your way all the time? You're going to need to get your mind working better as a machine to help you along the way. We work on the Sagittarius. Sag is the first house, Capricorn is the second house. So for Sagittarius, it's going to be a second house transit for you. That means that beside your money and your collections and the things you value, mainly the second house is the house of self-worth. I need to get my self-worth strong. Now, I can guarantee each one of you is going to feel this in some way. And I reiterate, every chart you look at, for me, the next couple of weeks, any chart I got, I'm going right to 0 Capricorn. Right to 0 Capricorn, because that's where the zodiac's on fire right now. Finally, Capricorn. Capricorn, put it on the first house. Saturn's entrance into Capricorn will be in the first house. So the first house is so big, it's hard to even talk about. It simply means you've got to get yourself together. You need to take ownership for yourself and the way you are being in the world. Now let's see a wave of hands if you could identify with what I said about your sun sign. Can you identify with what I said to you? Okay, very good. Now, I want to get on to the subject at hand, which is reading a chart and how do you tell something's strong or something's weak. Now, I can only tell you you're going to learn so much from books, but it's going to be the entire body of work that you gain through the years. You didn't hear Pisces? Okay, Pisces, if Pisces in the first house, then Aquarius is in the 11th. I'm sorry. Pisces is in the first. Aquarius is in the 12th. Boy, I am screwing up. Saturn's in the 11th. Okay, you're right. I did miss that. I'm really winging it here and paying the price. Saturn will be in the 11th house for all Pisces. The 11th house is a very big house, very misunderstood. It is your hopes and wishes. It's your ability to work together with people, to create with groups of people, to get involved in clubs, activities. Do it with groups of people. Collective energy, collective creativity. Thank you for pointing out my second blunder out of 12. I was pretty bad, 2 out of 12. I guess I get a B minus. Okay. What I'm trying to tell you is you're not going to look at a chart and say, this planet's strong, this planet's weak. I get a pass. Thank you, Erica. Okay, very good. Everybody's getting uppity with me. Tonight's show is 61, by the way. All right. The more you learn about all of astrology, the better you'll be able to come into a chart and know what's strong and what's weak. I was talking to Eliza. We have 80 years of experience together. And she was telling me she's just now getting to the point where she can look at a chart, what's strong, what's weak. And that only happened to me 10 years ago, after 30 years. Don't be discouraged. Keep studying. What you have to do is, it's kind of a complex thing. Don't put yourself down when you translate incorrectly, but also don't put too much belief in what you just said. It's tricky. It's very tricky. But as time goes on, you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. You'll look at a chart, shut the lid. This is what this means. It will come to you. Let's get started. And I'm going to start with the way they appear on my screen. And instead of starting with Karen, who's next, I'm going to start picking on Waldemar just because I want to. Because he's been sending me all these funny things. Let me, you are unmuted, Waldemar. I'm going to go look at your chart.
That's bullying.
Okay, here you go. So, remember, I'm going to use this mainly as a teaching tool. Now, let me get this repainted so you all can see it. Okay, here's this chart. Here you can see the midheaven and the nadir, and the ascendant and the descendant. I want to stop and talk about this for a minute because it's so unbelievably important. The ascendant and the descendant are so important. The midheaven and the nadir. And if you don't have a birth time, you don't know what these are. You can tell the sun is down here around midnight. The sun is here around sunrise. So you can tell that by looking at the sun here between these two angles, he's born sometime about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I look, there he's born at 2:45. Now, let's reiterate why these angles are so strong. This is the self, these is others. This is me, this is my partner. This is how I learned to be myself. This is how I learned to be with others. The nadir is where I'm coming from. The midheaven is where I'm going to. Where am I coming from? What's my past? Where I'm going to. Self, others, my past, where I'm at now, where I'm going. These angles are unbelievably important. Now, I'm telling you, this is shocking when you realize what this means, because this whole thing spins around once per day. Once per day, 24 hours. This means that if you were born on the space shuttle, coming back to Earth, and that space shuttle was rotating like this, and if you knew the split second that you were born, we don't even know if that means you cut the umbilical cord. Is that when you take your first breath? Is that when your body gets free from mama? What is the moment of birth? But that space shuttle, the 12 houses are going around this fast, this fast, this fast. And that second of birth, you freeze that chart. So, if Waldemar were born 1 day later, his sun would be at 6 degrees of Sag instead of 5. And he would largely have the same house cusps. So it's remarkable how important these 4 angles are. So therefore, one of the main things, of course he doesn't have any, is when you're born with planets near the angles. He doesn't have any. Planet here is strong. Planet here is strong. Planet here is strong. Planet here is strong. None of his planets are very angular. Okay, so we don't check that off with him. What do we see that's very important? We see this great big black triangle. So this opposition between Jupiter and Uranus is really powerful because Jupiter's at 4, Uranus is at 5, and the sun is at 5. This is very tight. 4, 5, 5, and 7. So what this means is his sun becomes extremely important, not just because his sun is in Sagittarius, but because his sun is at the point of the T-square. And all of his energy that gets batted back and forth sends its excess energies to that sun. Now, the sun is very conducive to a native person who also happens to be a Sagittarius. So in other words, he's very solar, not leonine, but solar. The sun rules Leo. The sun is compatible with the sun in Sagittarius. And when you look at him, what's he always doing? Got a great big smile for you. That's a very Sagittarian thing. That's also very much a leonine or a solar thing. So we know right away his sun is excessively important. So we know that Waldemar does not have trouble expressing himself. And if he does, it's probably something else happening with the other planets. We know that this sun is very strong. Now we see the moon is in Sag also. So now we know this guy's a fiery guy. He's fiery. He doesn't want to be around depressing people. He doesn't want to hear depressing stories. He doesn't want to hear you talk about how you can't do something. He does want to hear how you can. And he's going to smack you on the butt, smack you on the back. You can do it. Let's go. He's upbeat. Libra rising's not going to hold him back. The Mars and Leo is just going to help it. So we see this guy's very fiery by theme. The next thing I want to look at, and I'm going to move on through many people, is this Venus-Neptune is very strong, just because it's a strong conjunction of two planets. Here's the Venus known in Scorpio for being very passionate. Is very passionate. Usually Venus and Scorpio people, they love something, they hate it. They love it, they hate it. That's not a Sagittarian thing. That's not a fiery thing. Fiery people are not love it, hate it. But he gets the love it, hate it extremes because the Venus is in Scorpio. Now, you put it next to universal Neptune, this becomes very strong because Neptune's very romantic. It's very dreamy. Meet you up in the clouds, buddy. So we see mainly in this chart, and this is kind of unusual, mainly in this chart, there are 2 points that are really strong. The sun, maybe the sun and the moon, and the Venus-Neptune. Because he has what's unusual about his chart, he does not have many planets that are angular. Nothing in the first house. Saturn is very weak in the fourth house. I'll speak to that. Nothing in the seventh, nothing in the 10th. A planet is strongest at the beginning of a house. If this Saturn were over here, he'd be really strongly Saturnian, but it's very weak over here. It's not that strong. It's got a little square over to Venus, 6 degrees to 12 degrees. So his Saturn is not real strong. It's not, I'm not going to say it's weak, but it's not real strong. As we move through more and more charts, you'll get the idea. Now I'm going to bring up Karen D. There she is on your screen. Okay. Now in Karen D's chart, the Venus is very strong, and let me show you how that works. Houses are not like signs. People say, oh, I'm born on the cusp. I think I'm a little bit this, a little bit that. You are either one sign or you're the other. That's why the exquisite zodiac has a diamond on the front. Each facet is clear. The facet's not rounded. The facets are sharp angles. You are one side or you're the other. There is no cusp. The reason people think there's a cusp is because in the newspaper they say, well, Leo's from this day to that day, because the newspaper has to print a generic date. But some years, the sun changes signs on the 20th of April. Some years it changes on the 21st. It's a little different because things aren't that perfect. So with the signs, there is no cusp, but with the houses, there are. So for instance, this Venus here, which is in the third house, is also affecting the fourth house because it's about really 3 degrees away. When it gets about 4 degrees away, it starts to affect the next house. So in my opinion, through working for years, this Venus is a third house and a fourth house Venus. It's very much affecting this house. This Mars is very angular. Do you notice the Mars is 4 degrees from the ascendant? It's very angular. This Jupiter is angular, but it's weaker because it's not too close. Degree is everything. The orb, ORB, is everything. This Jupiter is 13 degrees above the descendant, but yet it's angular. So her Mars and her Jupiter are strong. Her Venus is pretty strong. Her Neptune is very strong, and here's the reason why. Her Neptune's extremely strong, even though it's 15 degrees away from the nadir, because it squares the ascendant. A square to the ascendant is extremely, extremely critical. A big, big deal. So we would draw that Neptune really big, and this is where we see Karen picks up her Piscean energy. She is very Neptunian. So that's really good to fight off some of the possible arrogance of Leo, some of the possible uptightness of Virgo. That Neptune allows her to be a little more laissez-faire. Take it easy, let it go, and that's how she is. And if that Neptune was not there, she would be much more uptight and more anal with all these Virgo planets. And I think the Neptune really helps to curb the sharp edges of that Mars. The Neptune, like we've always talked about, is very smooth and loving and accepting. And she does have a very smooth, tactful way about her. This is a strange sensation here. This moon is kind of by itself, and this Jupiter's kind of by itself. That makes a planet very strong when a planet's by itself. That's the handle of a bucket pattern. So this big bucket here, here's the handle. So she's very Jupiterian, or the word Jovian, named after the god Jove, who's the ruler of Sagittarius. So we know that she picks up a lot of Sagittarian qualities from this Jupiter. And this moon is kind of by itself too. Kind of. But it's not really a bucket. But a planet by itself picks up a lot of strength. The Sun Pluto is not real strong. She does pick up Sun Pluto because it's 7 degrees away. But I guarantee if this Pluto were 2 degrees away, she would be much more Plutonian, which is the ruler of Scorpio. She's got very strong Saturnian Virgo influences because she's got the Mercury 6 degrees from Saturn. She's got 3 planets in Virgo. The Neptune is extremely strong. Let's move on. The more charts you see, the better. Susan A. Okay, let me get Susan A on the screen here. Let's see. I don't know if she's with us or not. There you are. Okay. Susan. Okay, here's her sun in Sagittarius. We know the Mars is extremely strong because of the bucket. Now remember, this is Chiron. This is the North Node. So these are not really planets per se. So all our planets are right here in a bucket, and there's Mars. So we know. Here's what's so interesting, Susan. Your Mars is weak because it's in a weak sign of Pisces, but it's strong because it's in the first house, and it's the tip of a bucket pattern, see? So this gives you Aries qualities, Martian qualities. And we know that you're not going to have to convince the rest of your chart to let Mars get into play because you're already Sagittarian. You got a moon in Gemini. Okay, Mars is, I want to go do something, I go do it. I want to do something, go do it. Sag says, why not? Let's do it. Do it big. So we see that you do pretty well with your Mars, but we do know that there is conflict here because Mars and Venus have to work together in the chart. They just have to work together in a chart. One is the yin, one is the yang. And your yin is right next to Saturn. So while your Mars is busy asserting itself and being fine with it, your Venus is always stopping and saying, I'm not sure, because it's right next to Saturn. It's 1 degree away. So this is very strong, not only because of the conjunction and it's close, but because it squares the ascendant. This is extremely critical, these two planets. Venus, Saturn. Let me get my circle thing out here. So it'll help you to understand visually. These two planets are very, very strong because they're 15 and 16, and the ascendant's 15 and a half. So we know that when you took this lifetime, we don't know exactly why. We know that you wanted to be very careful how you socialize. You're very passionate. It's in Scorpio, but you made sure in this lifetime, in the area of philosophy, you made sure that you're being very careful to follow the rules or whatever that means for you. We know that Neptune is really strong because it's a tip of a T-square. See it? See all that energy that goes there? It's also the tip of this grand trine. Neptune to Mars, over to the moon. This beautiful grand trine, Mars, Moon, Neptune. So we know you have a lot of deep spirituality. You got to get past this by understanding this Saturn. These two planets are not really strong because they're in the 6th house. The Pluto is not too strong. It is angular, but it's 8 degrees opposite of Mars. So those are your really strong planets right there. The Venus, Saturn, and the Neptune. The more and more I work with Venus, Saturn, and I see it a lot, what I have come to see with it, it's the behave yourself conjunction. You don't even know where it's coming from, but inside you, it's like this voice is always saying, behave yourself, behave yourself. And that sure as hell is not a Sagittarian phrase. Sag doesn't know what behave yourself means. Sag is, are we having fun yet? That's Sag. Okay, let's keep going through the charts. That's how we learn. Okay, let's go to Miss Elke. If I get rid of these things, maybe it'll let me. Yeah, I guess I got to do that. All right. There you are, Elke. Let me go get my tools again because I have fun drawing pretty pictures. Okay, in Elke's chart, this is so unbelievably important because it's angular. This is 1856, so it's almost 19. It's 1 degree from the descendant. So this Jupiter is very 6th house-like and 7th house-like. So what do you get when you get a strong Jovian symbol like this in the house of relationships? We do not get the typical Cancer. The typical Cancer is very cautious, quiet little steps. Are you going to treat me right? I'm being careful here. You don't get that with Elke. You get a very powerful Jupiter at the tip of a T-square. You see the T-square? This Jupiter is really strong, so this belies her and sometimes fakes other people out, and she even fakes herself out sometimes because she comes across like, how do I say this to you? I can slap her on the back and say, hey, buddy, how you doing? You doing okay? And she'll say, doing okay, and she'll kind of let it roll off her back. That's Jupiter. But you know, deep inside, she's very Cancerian. So you know she's more tender than what she appears to be. She's more sensitive than how she appears. Because anything that's found along the ascendant and descendant has a lot to do with how you look, the way people perceive you. So people, they often misjudge her. This is not done intentionally. They misjudge her because her Jupiter's so strong, and they may say something to her that's got a little barb to it, thinking she can handle it, when inside she's more sensitive than what that she realizes. Okay. Now, since she's a Cancer, you look to see the moon. That's their second sun sign, the moon, ruler of Cancer. So the moon is very important. It's pretty much by itself, and the moon is in Aquarius. So we're liking what we see here, and I'll tell you why. When you have a Cancer, you've got to have energies in the chart that keep them from wallowing. This is the downside of Cancer. Oh, I'm having a hard time. Oh, boy, wish somebody'd help me. You know, we all got these dark sides of our signs. But these energies really help Elke. This moon keeps her somewhat detached, being in Aquarius, and she can make things intellectualized, where the Cancer's all subjectivity. And the Jupiter makes her get back on the horse and try again. Okay, so these things can really counterbalance her. But what I've learned through talking with her, what's really critical in her chart is this. This Pluto opposition to Saturn is really, really strong. Now, let's examine, zoom in closely. The Saturn is at 16, 17. The ascendant's at 20. 20, 17, 20. Pluto's over at 14. So it helps out because it's off center a little bit. Pluto opposite Saturn means what? If you read your basic Arroyo, and I found this to be true, for whatever reason, this is somebody who carries the weight of the world on their shoulders. Let's get out of this for a moment. Cancer people do not carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. Cancer people carry the weight of their family on their shoulders, and that's about it. Now, since she has a moon in Aquarius, she's more concerned about the public and the overall well-being of all people on Earth than most Cancers, and she's got a strong Jupiter. So she does have great concerns of carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She's not a typical Cancer. Cancer is more of, I'm going to take care of myself before they even worry about the family. And usually it goes to the family limits, and that's it. My little bubble where I'm safe. She's not that way. So what you start to see when you examine this stuff for a long time is your sun sign has been BSing you for a long time, all of you. The sun sign is a big BSer. The sun sign is just like saying, I'm driving a Chevy, I'm driving a Ford. And that's really, you got to treat it very lightly. Don't identify too much with your sun sign, because we're all very complex beings. So we see with Elke, the Saturn Pluto is very strong, the Jupiter is very strong, the moon is strong in Aquarius. And one of the real secrets in that chart is that Jupiter along that axis, that Jupiter makes her look like, slap her on the back, get her another whiskey, you'll be fine, hey, let's be all right. And she can do that. In 5 minutes later, you talk to her and you can see that the tender little girl inside, which is all Cancer, could be upset by something that was just said, because they are tender people. Okay, so we're going to continue. Let me stop right there. Elke, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's pretty true. I get no sympathy from other people.
And you're really putting out the signal that you don't need it. You're putting out the signal, that's no big deal. And it's not something you're consciously doing, But to me, the real secret to your chart, without a doubt, is the Saturn at the bottom. The Saturn at the bottom tells me in this lifetime, you said, in my opinion, you said coming into this lifetime, I'm going to stick close to home. And if I stick close to home, Saturn at the bottom, I'll be okay. And you found out that leaning on the post at home is not always safe, because what happens if the family gets up and leaves? So this is all perfectly said, just as you know, that chart is exactly the way it needs to be, and you need to work through these issues as we all do. Are you guys starting to get an idea now of how I make something strong or weak? Okay, I want to keep on going because we have a lot to do. Thank you, Elkin.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, Erica. Okay, now let's go back to here. And we'll shut that one off and we'll turn Miss Erica on. Do I turn you on, Erica? Don't answer it. Okay. Now look at Erica. What do you see right away? Boom. Oh, I can't use that. That was boomless. Okay, I got to go reset that each time. A little circle thing. No, it's... What do you see right away in Erica's chart? Oh, that Neptune is so strong, even though it's 4 degrees above the ascendant. So we take what can be, and often is one of the smallest souls. What I mean by that is Tauruses don't think big. They're very content in a small circle. But that's not who Erica is, because she got the big Neptune, because it's right there rising. We got a very intriguing 3 planets in Leo. These planets are also called rising. Planets coming through the first house. This is actually the horizon when you're born. So the moment the sun was starting to set, about 6 o'clock, she's born 6 o'clock. As the sun was setting, Neptune had just risen. You can't see Neptune because it's too far away, but if you could, you would have seen Neptune right on the horizon. So Neptune is very strong. She's got some strong Leo traits. And that's good because fire counterbalances Neptune. Neptune is selfless. Leo is selfish. So she's got a pretty good blend, and she can work these two out. Now, what you want to do with this stellium of planets here is you want to zoom in closely. You don't just eyeball it and scantily look at it. You look at it closely. The Pluto moon is 7 degrees apart. This is 8 degrees apart. So Pluto is sitting at the midpoint between her moon and Saturn. That's very powerful. The Moon-Saturn combination has a midpoint, which is around 11, and Pluto's sitting right on it. That's where that book, The Combination of Stellar Influences by Everton, would tell you exactly what that means. In astrology, that's written as Pluto equals Moon/Saturn. Pluto equals Moon/Saturn, which means Pluto lives at the midpoint of Moon and Saturn. What that tells me, and these are hard to translate because you're doing 3 things at once. Moon-Saturn is her ability to discipline herself emotionally while she's being expressive, and then she just explodes. It's just this rotating syndrome here of being emotionally disciplined, being fine with it, and then she just explodes, which means I can't keep myself contained all the time. It's volcanic. So this is very intriguing. I would have to study this for a long time. This Mars is extremely powerful. It is 8 degrees from Venus, but the Mars is right on the descendant. 1254, 1259. This is the strongest planet in the chart. because it's so angular. But almost everybody you ever talk to in astrology tells you they're born at 6 o'clock. Almost everybody you ever talk to is born at 6 in the morning. Now, she happens to be born at 6 at night, and I doubt it. So I would hold doubt in my mind as I read her chart, and I would be ever ready to rectify this chart because she may be born 5 minutes till, 3 minutes after, because very few people are born right on the hour. But if this chart is true, she's very Martian. Martian. And I think she's got a little bit of that in her, but I don't feel it to be exceptional or real strong. This Uranus is very weak. It's in the early stages of the 9th house. It only has 2 sextiles to it. It's not aspecting anything else. So there are your main planets, the Neptune, the Mars, and these 3 planets. And what I've learned from my chart is I have a very powerful Mars-Neptune, just like she does. And Mars-Neptune is a dichotomy, because Mars is all about, I want to go get what I want. Neptune is saying, oh, no, you're not. You're going to think about everybody else instead. I want what I want. No, I want what they want. No, I want what I want. No, I do want what they want. And I'm sure Elke can tell you this through her various studies. It's very important to use astrodrama when you're trying to learn to read a chart. Oh, you may think I'm silly, but what I do is I picture myself inside a pinball machine when I look at a chart. Near the bumpers? And that's how I learn. Yeah, well, me, well, us. Well, me, well, us. Bing, be boing, ba bing, be boing. T square, ding, 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 ding. Bing, be boing, bing, be boing. Bring it to life when you talk about it. That's how you learn. You learn intuitively the symbiotic value of it. 2 and 2 equals 5. So you see that this Mars and Neptune don't have an outlet. There's no T-square. There's no T-square here. There's no T-square here. So she goes back and forth. That's like, you've seen the pinball go, the ball gets caught between 2. That's what happens with her. Me, everybody else. Me, everybody else. Me, everybody else. See, and she doesn't have an outlet. So luckily, even though she doesn't have an outlet for that, she does have a very healthy outlet with 3 strong Leo planets. So I'm going to ask you, Erica, you're on now. What do you feel, and this Venus even gets involved, what do you feel that Mars, Neptune, can you feel it ping-ponging inside you?
Definitely the way that you described, because the Mars is, the desire to try something or do something, and then with the Mercury also in Aries, it's like the constant ideas, and so it's like too many ideas. And is that just an idea that's good for me, or would that be good for everybody?
Right. The problem with Mars Neptune is, and the Mars is in Aries, so we know it's well placed because Mars rules Aries. Mars is, I want what I want. I'm going to go get it. I'm not trying to be rude. I just want to go get it. And Neptune is, well, you better take your time and think of everybody else while you go. Mars doesn't want to take its time. It wants what it wants. Neptune.
Well, when I was younger, I did do that, and I did create some messes by doing that.
Sure.
I'm not considering other people when I was still immature, and I had a hot temper, and would just go do something randomly sometimes.
This is also, and Arroyo tells us this is really true, because I've got Mars and Neptune at the same degree. So I know what you're feeling here. Mars Neptune is the symbol of discouragement. I don't care where your Mars is. When your Neptune is opposite Mars, people get discouraged just by looking at you. sideways out of my eye. You can get real discouraged. Somebody gives you a look, even though your Mars is so strong, and that's that Neptune influence. You see, these two planets are really powerful because they go across the ascendant. So when you're in a relationship with any type of person, you start to get aggressive and assert yourself. Then you start to hold back. Then you assert yourself. Then you hold back. And it's like you can't win. You can't do one. You can't do the other. So you have to just kind of pick one, live with it, and keep trying to satisfy both. Does that make sense?
Yes, and also with that Libra rising and that sun in the partnership house, it's always, how do I please the partner? How do I please the partner? Idealizing relationship and how perfect it should be when it's right. And that never really wins out because then the other person gets annoyed because then I'm not being myself, and then I get mad at them because I did everything the way they wanted and they never really asked me to.
You're exactly right. And what you find out in the long run is eventually people want you to be yourself.
Yeah.
And they can sense when you're not. Well, this is very strong, and this comes about from a past life where you felt that you were too selfish in some form. So in this life, you said, well, I'm going to put Neptune right there opposite Mars so I won't be tempted to be selfish again. And that doesn't mean you were selfish. It means in the past life that you felt you were, or that you were programmed through dogma to think that. But let's move on because you see a good idea here of how this can be. One more thing I will say, this is very intriguing because Venus and Mars are known for being very charismatic, and when they're together, they're very narcissistic, especially in Aries. Well, you're not narcissistic, and I guarantee you would be if that Neptune weren't there. This is very much, look what I did. Didn't I do a good job? We know somebody that's leading a famous country in the world now who's kind of narcissistic. I won't mention his name. Okay, but the Mars-Venus is too strongly impacted by the very powerful Neptune for it to get away with that. So you can make this chart work. It's just, this is your life's work. Let's move on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Kind of cool. Okay, let's see who's next on the list here. On the hot seat list. My God, it's 9 minutes after 9. How fast that went. Susan F. is not with us tonight. Baltimore I've already abused. Here's Mars. Mark. See how much fun these Sages are. You can abuse them all you want. They just love it. He'll get me later. I know he will. I got Mercury and Sag, Baltimore. I can handle it. Okay, Mark. Right away, you see powerful sun sitting right on the midheaven. Let me get these tools ready here. And, okay. See how important the angles are? Look at that Venus 26, 27, 26. These two planets are right. He was born with the sun, Venus right above him. Beautiful. Sun, Venus people are all about, they know how to enjoy life. Look at Uranus, how powerful. Right on the ascendant. Look at Neptune, powerful. And they're all involved in a T-square. So we've talked about this before. Be yourself. Be out for others. Be yourself. Be out for others. Be yourself. Be out for others. This fight that goes back and forth, unlike the ping pong that Erica has, he has an outlet to Uranus. So what's so intriguing about this? If you just looked at this triangle, he would be very Uranian, and Uranus in Leo is very off the wall and colorful and expressive, kind of wild. And that's going on inside of Mark. I don't care what he shows you, that's going on in him. Okay? But what calms it down is his ruling planet is Mars. He's in Aries. His ruling planet is, that's not the right tool. His ruling planet, there's the Mars Saturn. So this Leo, this Uranus in Leo is really strong. I stopped to question the birth time. I got a 12:30 birth. That's why the sun is on top of the sky. Uranus has just risen. So we now know that the Saturn is keeping that Mars down. It's keeping that Mars controlled. And see, the reason you bring these things up is when these planets get hit, is when these things change. So you got the T-squared to Uranus. The moon is kind of strong because it squares Pluto. But the ones that are circled are the main energies and this opposition here. So I would tell you that when this Saturn gets hit, watch this. Watch this. When this Saturn gets hit, it's the glue and it's also the repressive quality. Okay? When this Saturn gets hit, it loses its grip on the Mars and indirectly loses its grip on this entire T-square. So I'm going to take you back in time because the nearest thing I can remember is we just had Saturn hit this. Saturn just went around once. It went around twice when you're around 58. So about a year and a half ago, when Saturn returned here, but Saturn's here now, what happened to you, Mark, when the Saturn return happened?
Let's see. I was let go from my last position, so big change in career.
Okay, now I want to leave that on a side burner for a minute because this is very complicated. I want to show you something else. I want to take you back in time. Get into my time machine. Let me show you this. That's not right. I got so many knobs and buttons to push. Let's go here. Okay. I want to see what happened when Neptune was there. Okay, here's Neptune. I want to go back and see. Let's see here. I want to see what happened in an early age when Neptune hit this Saturn, even though you were a lot younger. We're moving this Neptune back here. Let's put
I have to refresh the screen, Rick. It's not showing up for us.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, we're going back. We're going back in time. Okay, approximately 1976. Do you see the transiting Neptunes on the Saturn? Okay, here's a Neptune in birth. It went to here and sits on that Saturn. This was in 1976, and you were 19 years of age. And what I think happened, by the looks of things, is you replace a lot of mental discipline with a lot of spiritual opening. I think you went through a huge spiritual awakening when Neptune went over that Saturn. What happened when you were 19?
I don't remember that happening. I'm not saying it didn't. I just don't remember it. That was probably the transition of going back to school. So when I graduated high school, I went to work in construction. and figured out that wasn't a life path. So I went back to school at that time. That was probably the major life event at that point in time, though.
Okay, we see Uranus coming through. Let's go forward. See Uranus here?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go forward. We want to get you. I usually like to work with people age 26 or older because you're through the excitement of age 21 and it's a little bit easier to read for people. Let's go back in time here. Now, you see how Uranus, I want to get this really close. It'll come, this will actually bring it down to the exact date, actually. So I'm lining Uranus up with Saturn. $13.50. Okay. December the 5th, 1984. Let me explain to you why. Remember that. December of 84. 84, you were 27 years old?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's why I want to do this. Watch this. This should have been all hell broke loose. I'll show you why. Remember how I said he's got the Sun and Neptune and Uranus, this T-squared to Uranus, and he's got the Saturn kind of blocking the Mars, and the Neptune's kind of watering down. Well, all this restraint, all of a sudden Uranus is the planet that doesn't put up with restraints. It breaks through. So in 1984, this Uranus hit that Saturn. So what happened in 84?
Let's see, the 84-85 transition is when I graduated college. And about that time, December of 84, was when I made the decision to go into the military. So that was when I made the decision, but, went in the military, let's see, May of 85. So.
Was it a sudden decision?
In retrospect, it doesn't feel like a sudden decision, but it probably was a pretty sudden decision, but it wasn't traumatic.
I didn't say traumatic. I said sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why? The reason is you've got this, you're constraining yourself, you're holding back, and all of a sudden your own Uranus comes over this Saturn, and you start saying, I don't want to control myself so rigidly anymore. And paradoxically, you go into the military. But what that tells me is that some people go into the military, find it to be very confining, but for you, it was the opposite. It released you. It gave you more opportunity, more expression. That's what Uranus does.
And just to validate that, everybody's experience in the military is different. That's just the way it works. But I found the military to be the best job I've ever had.
Okay, why?
The role that I played, I just had lots of degrees of freedom. I had lots of authority and lots of responsibility.
See, now how many times are you going to find somebody tell you, I went into the military and I got a lot of freedom? But do you see astrologically why?
Mm-hmm.
Because the key part of him that holds himself back, and he needs to, let go for a while. Now I want to tell you, if you had answered no to me, that it wasn't a release, that it didn't happen suddenly, that it wasn't liberating, then I know you got problems with Uranus. That it's very hard. I can keep shocking you with electric and you don't feel it. And that's a bad sign. But you did the right thing. You went with the flow. So you can see by reading Powerful Planets, not only do you get a higher glimpse of the chart, but you see what's really in control, what gets hit, and why and how it changes. The transiting planet, the one that's coming across, and I don't mean the little moon and the little Venus, the big guys. When they come across, that's when you feel this thing coming on. You feel this urge. Pluto comes through, you feel this urge to fix an entire house from the ground up. Neptune comes across, you're not sure what to do, and you just kind of go out the pasture, leave me alone. Uranus comes through, and you want to break all the restraints so you have more elbow room. See, no matter what you're talking about here, we're talking about an Aries. And Aries want to do what? They want to free themselves. They want to explore. They want to challenge themselves. They're fascinated with themselves. What can I do? Remember I told you a long time ago when my little boy gave me a board and I gave him a board and a nail and a hammer, and he pounded the nail into the board and he said, "Look what I did, Dad. Look what I did." That is Aries. It's that simple. That doesn't mean they're small-minded. It means they're just so fascinated with what they can do. It's not selfish. Now, if I don't want anybody else to talk and I make you watch me put nails in boards all day, that's selfish. But you see, that's what Aries is here for. Aries is the excitement of the illusion of God becoming an individual, because it is an illusion. When God said, "I am so big and I'm so one that I would like to separate myself, at least kid myself, and become a separate entity," thus you have the birth of Aries. That's why you need to read the Exquisite Zodiac, because it starts with that illusion, it goes through all the increases of the ego, and it returns back to the self. That's what the book's about. Okay, that was very good, Mark. Thank you. I'm going to do one more. See who's on our list. And God, you guys make me work hard. Okay, let's see. We got Barbara is not with us tonight, is she? John. Good old John. All right, there's John. Let's get him on the screen. I wonder where Barbara's usually here. John. Okay, get my tools out. And okay, John, right away you see the Mercury, you see the Pluto, and they're huge because they square the ascendant. Huge. Mercury 15, ascendant 15, Pluto 15. His life is about Mercury opposite Pluto, period. And why is that intriguing? Because he found his astrology teacher when Pluto was at 15, when he and I met. This is about somebody, when you have an opposition to Pluto, it's very tough. Don't ever try to write it in pen. Use a pencil. This is about somebody in a past life who came out of a situation where he felt mentally inferior to others, or somebody tried to tell him that he was mentally inferior to others. Something like that, along those lines. So I don't see it that much with John, because John does have these strong Leo planets that really help. But this is somebody who came out of a lifetime where, whatever reason, he was pressured to prove himself mentally. And I guarantee you, in all his relationships, even though I find John to be so easy to be around, he's so smooth, this Mercury-Pluto is going to come into play with every relationship he has, because look what it does to the ascendant. So let's talk to John as I unmute you, John. Let's talk to you about the last 5 years. Since Pluto went over this area, and we knew all up until 5 years ago, you had this constant Mercury-Pluto theme with everybody you met, right?
Yes.
Everybody. And then Pluto came to this area and made a grand cross out of the whole thing. So what happened to you then?
Oh, a lot of things. Well, I seem to have been butting heads with a few people here and there, particularly bosses. I will say that. One in particular consulted
I
with.
didn't hear anything.
Okay, did you hear me?
I didn't hear anything.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I'm just joking with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just, I mean, a lot of things I have been, I feel like everything that you said, Rick, as far as my, I guess, being made to feel mentally inferior, I guess maybe I've been trying to compensate for. I mean, you know, I am this guy who's working on 2 doctorates right now, so I mean, I think that might have something to do with it. Yeah, but yeah, I had a boss who, you know, as I feel like I'm dealing with now, again, you know, it's like these people keep, it's like they don't think I'm capable of doing what I know I can do.
Well, what I'm asking you is, in the last 5 years, what has changed compared to how you were all those years before? What changed in terms of Pluto hitting that descendant? Because when Pluto hits the descendant, it means you're done playing these games. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not playing up with your stuff anymore. How did it work with you?
I'm determined I'm going to find a way around or through them one way or another, though. Before I just was like, okay, you know, I'll deal with it some kind of way. But when Pluto got to my descendant, and I guess it wasn't obvious right away, but in retrospect, which is, I think, is how Pluto works, like, hey, even like with this current situation, I'm like, you know, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm, you know, if I can't go through this particular situation, I'm going to find a way around. And
exactly.
it's almost going to be like, okay, you were saying you were trying to stop me. I'm still going to do what I'm going to do regardless. So
now, another thing is
power of my confidence.
Your Mars is very strong. It's at the tip of a T-square.
And it's about to oppose my sun too. I just
Mars in Leo. But here's what's going to happen to you eventually. When you're old man and you've done 10,000 charts and you look back at this chart, here's what's going to happen. You're going to look and see this lifelong struggle with Mercury, Pluto, and you're going to realize, I never had to make it a struggle. I've always been able to deal with this. I've always have been able to deal with this in a much smoother way. Because as you age in astrology, all your harsh angles and your harsh oppositions, they all seem like such albatrosses. And when you look at them, you see that they can work themselves out in much smoother ways. In other words, this started from a past life, and you came into this lifetime, decided that you really wanted to challenge yourself and all this stuff. Because of them, it's going to turn into, I've been doing this to myself the whole time.
I could see that. I could see that, Rick, eventually. I don't think
that's how it works. Okay, so as we go ahead, you had something final?
I was just going to say, as Suzanne is pointing out, maybe I have a little bit longer to go before I get there. So,
well, I do want to say something about that. Give me a moment. I have now changed. Everybody wave bye-bye to our YouTubers from all the unpluggers. Thank you for joining us tonight. Join us next week.